Hello everyone, I'm Verumbra and I'm back from a little break and a little bit of recovery time from the holidays. And with this video, well, I wasn't really sure if I was going to do this video or finish it. Seeing what with the recent legal changes with YouTube and whatnot, I wasn't exactly sure how YouTube would react to a video that could be easily misrepresented as a kid-friendly or kid-oriented video. Well, with that scare put to rest, I can go ahead and do this, and I will fully admit that this video was not fun to make. And before I really get in for the reasonings, I will say that yes, I am a returning fan, at least I was. Look, I've done a video explaining my position on the whole drama in the Pokemon community about these games. If you want to know what that is, you can just go ahead and watch it. Now, I've had a bunch of trouble with just technicalities on just trying to get the footage and all that, and I really didn't want to finish or even touch this project anymore. But because Game Freak decides to release the expansion, well, it feels like I need to at least say something. Definitely because in that last video, I did say that I was going to cover it. And well, here we are. Let me just say that this video is not a positive review. In fact, the biggest problem I have with it is that I have two ways to judge Pokemon. Should I judge it as a AAA title, because it's at $60, it's advertised as it, or should I judge it as another Pokemon game? Both ways are bad. I think the takeaway from this video, however, is a simple question that I would like you to at least ask yourself while you watch this video. At what point in time will you stop supporting this franchise? If you can't answer that honestly, then you're a slave to it. And that should be enough motivation for you to consider doing something about it, whether that be dropping the franchise or finding something else to support. But now that I've given that little disclaimer, let me move on to the problem at hand. And that is, of course, judging Pokemon as a AAA title is going to, one, not end well. It just won't, because it's not. But it was marketed and hyped up to be, so it will fall short heavily, and that will just piss off the fans. Then you have me judging Sword and Shield as a Pokemon game, and well, that won't work either, because there's this expectation that you go easy on them because, well, the Pokemon game hasn't been that great since Gen 5. And I find that somewhat detestable, because there are other franchises that have done exactly the same as Pokemon but haven't stagnated. One great example has been the Dragon Quest franchise. They have quintessentially built up their entire brand by being a classic JRPG that hasn't evolved too much but has most certainly refined itself. So much so that it is so acclaimed. There are very few fair weather fans in that entire sphere. So to me, judging Pokemon Sword and Shield as another step in its own franchise and go easy on it because the entire franchise is stagnated is wrong. And it would ultimately do the same thing as me judging the game as a AAA title. So either way, I'm really damned. This still ends up as a honest review, but a lot of it just devolves down into me ranting or just venting on me wishing to never have come back to the Pokemon series, or just wishing that Game Freak didn't shoot itself in the foot so many times it can't even stand. Because it's painful to see what Game Freak has done. Unlike EA, Bethesda, or Activision where you can laugh at them, there's no source of joy in their fumbling. It's just painful at this point. So now with this intro being so goddamn long, let me just go ahead and get to the review, shall we? But now that I got that small rant out of my system, I'm going to go ahead and just go through the different categories that I've somehow managed to come up with a few of my thoughts of these categories, as well as some issues that doesn't really fit in any categories, but still really hurts the game. Again, I'm going to try to have a score with and without the issues around the game. But either way, Pokemon is trash. The community is trash, and I don't like to call a community trash, but you guys have forced it. So let's just move on. Let's start with the story. Enjoy. how best to put this? Oh, I know. Let's think of a game that has a less than stellar storyline. But let's go with Anthem. Something that we can agree on that at its best is mediocre. On average, it's just bad storytelling. Well, Pokemon Sword and Shield is just worse. Because while Anthem's storyline doesn't have much to offer, it still at least has some form of plot development, and it doesn't keep you from playing the game. I mean, it uses just repetitive gameplay just to pad itself out, but the game doesn't actually keep you from the story. Pokemon Sword and Shield, on the other hand, just seems to love dangling out a piece of story. Then whenever you think you're going to get to it, oh, nope. Leon just comes on in, solves the problem, and tells you just to go on to the gym. Yeah, that's the story. In fact, the only time that it gets interesting, you realize it's over. You beat it. And that isn't hyperbole either. There's this one instance that sums it up perfectly. It's right after you beat one of the gyms. I'm not going to say which one because spoilers, but you come up to a cave and you hear rumbling or some sort. I don't remember the exact cue, but you know that there is a Dynamax Pokemon on the other side causing trouble. You're about to have some conflict in the story. Leon literally rushes in on his Charizard, takes care of it off screen, and Leon just tells you that your priority should be completing your gym challenge. The words that came out of my mouth after that scene was, did Leon just cockblock me from the story? At that point in time, I just could not take it anymore. And let's talk about the gyms, because they put so much emphasis on it. The gym challenges aren't new, they're not a new thing. These challenges have been in since I started playing in Gen 2, so just another stupid thing that they did for marketing. The story is a 1. The entire game progression system gets a 1 because it's bad. It goes out of its way to cut itself short, while hinting at, oh, there should be so much more, but we're going to take the short way out, for reasons. Okay, now on to the next part of this train wreck. Yeah, let's talk about the environment, music, sound, the graphics. Yeah, all of it just seems lazy. Like with the sound. There are Pokemon cries that are in the original bit depth of the games they debuted on. That's the only thing I can assume, because they are not in proper bit depth. They still sound like they're in 16 or 8-bit. The music, well, good for like the first playthrough and the first few times you hear it, but after that, it just gets dull and I'd rather it just be something else. In truth, it's just soulless. And I know Toby Fox did some music for this, but God, it's a miss. And then you can move on to the wild area, and God, it seems like it was just an idea that was pegged on to the game at the last moment because they realized they didn't have enough to actually justify a $60 price tag. That's what it honestly feels like to me, because it's not finished. The performance is so abysmal that it creeps along at like a single-digit frame rate at times, and the performance gets so bad that Pokemon will pop out right in front of you when you already hit them because they didn't finish rendering. And whenever you go into the normal routes, they look decent for a handheld, and they're overly short. In all honesty, the game would have been about 20 to 30 times better if they made multiple wild areas and use those as a substitution for the routes, because they feel spacious enough to be a route to the next city, which it essentially is, but it's far too small to be any form of an open world area for exploration or any of that stuff, because they're trying to push this off as the end game area, and it just does not work. It's just too small. And then you have all the little graphical errors and just pure laziness. I mean, the tree is still there. Even though they got huge flack, they decided to do nothing. It's almost like they don't know what they're doing. And if I'm being harsh, well, that's because it is. The Switch, while might not be a powerful console, it's still far more powerful than it needs to be for a Pokemon game. Their code. Anyways, this entire conglomeration of just missteps, mistakes is a 2 out of 5 if you really want me to put a number on this. Because if I divide it all up, they all pretty well get a 2 out of 5. So I'm just going to merge them all together for simplicity's sake. Let's move on to what should be the saving grace of this game. And that's how good of a monster taming game Sword and Shield is, since that's what the genre is called. This is where things start to get frustrating and confusing. Pokemon, it turns out, is incredibly deep for its strategy and its metagame. And to be honest, it's probably the deepest that I've seen any game really go into it. The basic principle behind Pokemon's metagame is that you choose a Pokemon you want to base your team around of as the central theme. Then you choose 2 defenders, 1 for special attacks, 1 for normals. Then you choose attackers, like you do your defenders, 1 for special, 1 for normal. And you have 1 more filler, but they're all based on how they can complement and strengthen your win condition Pokemon. So to kind of go a little bit more into detail, because I don't want to go that much because this video isn't about Pokemon's metagame, but whenever you choose a defender, you're going to look at the typing of your main Pokemon, and you're going to choose those that are not just have really good defenses, but they would also defend well against the types that your Pokemon is weak to. The same way with those that attack. And whenever you're in battle, you're constantly switching out and trying to think of what your opponent is going to be doing to counter your own moves, so you can of course counter them. I think it's also because of this meta that the player base has been divided up into 2 camps. The ultra casuals that don't really care about the game, but would rather just talk about Pokemon, draw art, and all whatnot. They care about the franchise, but don't give 2 shits about the actual game. Then you actually have people that care about the games, and they inevitably fall into the competitive sphere, because that's where Pokemon really shines, which makes the cut to the national dex seem really weird to who they're marketing for. And this is where I have to talk about the dex cut too, because it does some pretty nasty things to this game franchise. And it's that elephant in the room that all the big Poketubers wants to just ignore, from what I've seen. Or other YouTubers seem to use it to just lambast the series in general. But I'm going to give just 2 issues that I think the dex cut causes, because I think that's fair, and I think these points cover everything that really it does. The first one is that now the games are going to be this gamble of whether or not it's going to have the Pokemon you want in it. And I highly doubt Game Freak in its current state is going to actually have the integrity to come out and say to the fans, this is the roster for this game. No, they're probably going to keep it a secret up until launch, because they want everyone to pre-order. And what they'll eventually do is that it will hurt sales in the long term, because if it doesn't have your favorite Pokemon, you don't have much of an incentive to buy it. So it's going to start curving. The other problem with such a small roster is that the game gets quite repetitive very quickly. It wouldn't be so bad if, well, some of my favorite Pokemon were in it, but that harkens back to the first problem. The metagame also suffers from the dex cut, seeing that it becomes quite narrow with only 400 Pokemon. Some Pokemon are just stronger than others, as to be expected. But when you narrow down pool of choice artificially like this, it makes the metagame seem a little flat. And that's fine for those who only care about winning competitively. But those that enjoy the actual challenge that other people bring, well, those people are just going to burn out a lot quicker. This is all I really want to say on how the dex cut affects this game, because there's well enough other things that brings this game down to trash tier. And speaking of things that bring the game down, you remember me telling you about how Pokemon has one of the most complex metagames of any game that I've actually looked into? Yeah, none of that comes out in the single player experience. I mean, they could have just developed a simple script to emulate how a person would actually play in a competitive scene and make the game far more difficult, but they don't. The game is so easy, I didn't even lose a single battle until I got to the battle tower, which is well into the post game. At so many points, the game just gives you a full team restore. And I don't know how to say it other than that this is kind of insulting. I remember back in Gold and Silver, you had to manage your team, not be handed this whole, yeah, I'm just going to arbitrarily heal your entire party up even though we have no means to do it. And yeah, there are a few scenes that it makes no sense on how you're going to heal your team up through resting. The game holds your hand from start to finish, both in just healing your party as well as in the cutscenes and asking you, oh, do you know how to do this? Do you know how to do that? Ugh. I believe you can do a game that's easy and good, but what they did was just insulting. Now that I got all that out of my system, I should really just wrap this up, because this video is long enough and I don't feel like editing all of this. But before I close out with my final thoughts on the game, let me just thank all of you that's made it this far into the video. And if you enjoyed watching this video more than I did making it, then why don't you go ahead and hit that like button and possibly subscribe to the channel, since YouTube doesn't really promote any small content creators and whatnot. So if you enjoyed what I had to say, or just how I presented it, you probably won't find this video again. Okay, the best way I can summarize my experience with Pokemon Sword is that I caught myself multiple times on my playthrough just lying to myself, trying to make the game better than what it seemed. And I had to sit back multiple times and actually think, no, this is just bad. And that's just it. Pokemon is garbage, but it seems like someone forgot to bring the gasoline and the matches to make it a dumpster fire, because it's just disappointing. It's not even fun to laugh at. The entire scenario, everything from Game Freak to the community to the games, is just something I don't want to deal with. And that's really sad, because the game has so much potential and never gets to live up to it. And I mean, there are things that I want to achieve, like completing the decks, as well as making it to the Master Cup level in the, whatever you want to call it, the Battle Tower. But all of those are going to kind of feel empty because of the shortcuts Game Freak has took. And that's not even talking about the price points they're pushing now. Because let's just talk very quickly about that, and you're going to see why I'm going to give it a low score. Because right now, with the new main update, because they didn't fix anything, so that update was just to push out their expansion pack, with that in there, it's a 2. But if you want to know if it's worth it or not, well, is paying $126 for a complete game worth it? Because that's what you gotta ask yourself. And my opinion is no. Now, am I going to buy the expansion personally? It really depends if they have Slifer and Absol, because they're two of my favorite Pokemon. And that's still a hard decision. But anyways, this video has gone on long enough. I do, however, want to know what your opinions are. Do you think it's worth it, or maybe not? What about those that have actually bought the games but is watching this for some sort of reason? What's your experience been like now that it's been a few months since it's released? I do have some stuff that I still want to put out for Pokemon, my journey for completing the regional decks, as well as kind of how I climbed up the Battle Tower. I don't have any time frame for that because there are so many games that's going to be coming out this year, and Pokemon isn't my priority. So subscribe if you want to see that, because it will eventually come out, just like this video did. But that's it. Let me wind down this video by saying thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one.